remember we were talking about the issue with the legislation for protecting properties?
Mhm.
Many Bahamians who bought shares in those companies are not getting the dividends that they should get, even though the company is making considerable amount of money.
And that shouldn't be so.
Well, the reason for that, Elena and Renita, is that in law, there's no legal obligation for a company to pay dividends. They pay dividends at their discretion.
Mm. Yeah, because they, with the cable shares, they did say, I don't remember the exact words, but basically when they using the money, they use the monies to fund Alive, that project, and so they were like, okay, once they would have settled, and then they would resume payment.
I know, but they haven't resumed payment yet
No.
because they put a lot of money into Alive, and they're trying to keep as much money as possible in the company for as long as they can before shareholders come to a shareholders flick-in meeting and start throwing shares around. But
I swear.
you shareholders are so nice in the Bahamas, you don't even attend shareholders meeting, only a certain of majority shareholders, they make all the decisions until nothing gets done. So what you need to do, if you haven't had a dividend in a while, who has shares in Doggone Cable? Renita?
Huh? Yeah.
Renita.
Okay, Renita, here's what you do. First of all, tomorrow, call Cable Bahamas and ask them when the next shareholders meeting is scheduled for.
Right.
You will discover that it may not be so easy to get an answer because they're going to move you from pillar to post.
The post, yep.
Trying to get you to hang up the phone because they don't really want to answer that question. Secondly, go on the website and you can see if you can find out when the next shareholders meeting is scheduled for. And when they have that meeting, find out by hook or by crook, because the system is designed to exhaust you, Anita, so that you don't find out or even know if possible. But I encourage you as a shareholder, be bold. Find out by hook or by crook. Even if it means driving up to the head office and asking to speak with the secretary of the company or someone who can tell you when the next shareholders meeting will be. Carry your share certificate or whatever the hell evidence you have and tell them I am an owner, part owner of this company.
Yeah.
And I demand to know when the next shareholders meeting will be. When they finally tell you, God forbid, I can't promise you when that will be. But when they finally tell you, here's what I suggest, Renita. Attend your first shareholders meeting, even if you only have one flicking chair.
Exactly.
And then when you go on there, don't let them adjourn the meeting without your question. And your question is this, please, Renita, they're going to say, Renita, you may speak. And you may say, thank you.
That's right.
Be dramatic about it. I've been a shareholder of Cable Bahamas for a long time. And for a long time, I have not received the dividend from this company. And I'd like to know why.
Exactly.
They're going to give you some long story, but that's okay. Your point is going to be made. And when they finish their long story, tell them thank you, but I expect to be paid a dividend soon.
Yeah.
So make everybody uncomfortable, even if they ignore you. You make them uncomfortable, and you never know. Crap happens. Something might happen.
Exactly.
What do you have to lose? Nothing.
Nothing. Because I ain't getting nothing at the moment.
That's right.
Anyhow,
that's
you
right.
have nothing to lose, but you have something to gain. Notoriety. They say, mother flick, what the hell is Renita? She bold now. Because we don't normally have little itsy bitsy shareholders coming at all. So you could break the trend, Renita. You're an itsy bitsy shareholder. Show up at the next meeting and raise a little bit of help.
Yeah.
And go up to the mic. If they say, Renita, you may speak, do you have a mic? See, make it dramatic.
Yeah.
So by the time you leave,
Child in the States, tell them people to carry on. We like he say, we nice over here. We nice.
Too nice. That's why they keep putting their feet in our mouths.
That's
and I won't say where they put the other foot.
And your backside, right in our backside.
Okay. A word to the wise is indeed sufficient.
That's right.
All right. So there you have it. So this is what the equity side. So when you look at equity on your customer's balance sheet, now you know that's the customer's investment, that's the risk capital side. And once you subtract liabilities from equity from assets, you know the equity should be whatever is stated on the balance sheet. If you do the math yourself and it isn't what on the balance sheet, then you know something is wrong. All right.
Yep.
John, I did a calculation of equity and what I'm getting is not what you're showing on this balance sheet. How come? See my point? And that's what probing is all about. Okay. Now, for a sole proprietorship, we normally call it owner's equity or proprietorship equity. For a partnership, we call it what? Partnership capital. And then for companies, we normally refer to equity as shareholders' equity. Okay. You may want to write shareholders' equity down. That's the one that's not in your notes. All right, but that's the word we use for equity when we are referring to a company. Another name that we use for equity for a company, we tend to break it down into two categories. Look at the bottom of page 20. Equity for a company is normally broken down into two categories. One is called capital or common stock. Do you see that?
Yes.
And the other side of the equity is called retained earnings.
Earnings.
Yes.
Now, when you would have read retained earnings, you'll see it's a very simple concept, but in practice, it's simply this. When a company makes net income in any particular year, because net income is calculated at the end of each year, whether it's calendar or
Fiscal.
Fiscal.
so you guys have been listening.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
I haven't been wasting my bloody breath then.
No.
I'm thrilled to hear that. Okay, that's good. So the equity, the shareholders' equity in a company is divided into two categories. One is called common or capital stock. They're the same. The other one is called retained earnings. And when a company makes net income at the end of a particular year, fiscal or calendar, what they do is they take that total net income, let's say of $50 million, and they do two things with it. Some of it they give to shareholders, Renita, and the rest,
As they should.
the rest they retain in the company so that the company can have money to continue to do business, like increase its investment in, what's the name of the company? Renew. Or worse still, start another company with your money. How about that?
That's what they do.
Well,
And
that,
it's like, oh, we're gonna resume payment. Never happened. Now COVID happened.
that's what they do. Even though COVID happened, a company as rich as Cable and Renew, they could still pay a dividend. They're just using COVID as an excuse. Even if they pay a lesser dividend, they could pay it. They're just using COVID as an excuse, unfortunately. But then again, what would a little old itsy bitsy shareholder like Renita know? She doesn't even attend shareholders meeting, and they know because they know what only the major shareholders. Itsy bitsy shareholders don't attend shareholders meeting and make noise. They just sit around hoping to get a dividend check. But you should. So next meeting, whether COVID is over or not, go ahead and make some noise. Even if COVID is over, which I doubt, you can say, during COVID, I was surprised that you guys didn't pay a dividend when we needed it most. How unconscionable are you people? Don't you care for your owners of the company? Put it that way and make them uncomfortable. They don't like that kind of conversation because they just like to show up at shareholders meeting, run their own game, adjourn the meeting and eat caviar and drink wine.
That's right.
Or whatever they do. While the itsy bitsy shareholders just sit home waiting for dividends to be paid. All right, so there you have it. All right, something to keep in mind. All right, so when you see the shareholders equity, it's a company and it has two parts to it. When you see the owner's equity or proprietorship, it's a proprietorship equity. And when you see capital equity, partnership equity, it's for partnerships. Okay, and that's the important things you need to know. Valuation reserves. Normally, there's a whole lot of accounting stuff behind these things. You're just responsible for understanding that a reserve is something we allocate or put aside. For example, we reserve an amount of money every year for bad debts. We think not everybody's going to So already paid their debt, so 5% won't pay. So we take 5% of sales and we call that a reserve for bad debt. Just in case we have to do what? Write it off. So if you see a big reserve for bad debt on your customer's balance sheet, you start probing it.
Well, what happened here?
Yeah, what the hell you have this big reserve here for? Because sometimes people put big reserves not because it's true. It's just so that they get away with something.
Yeah.
And
They hiding the money.
Yeah,
lying.
yeah, write off some stuff that shouldn't be written off. Or write off some accounts and then still collect it and keep it. Or not deposit in the bank or whatever they're doing. So making sure the reserve figure makes sense is important. Even though as a lender, you may not be able to do that entirely, you should still always be what? Curious. Okay? There's also a reserve for depreciation in the middle of that page. We all know what depreciation is. All right? So if we say it's going to depreciate 10% a year, then we should reserve 10% of the cost of the asset every year. Simple as that. And put it aside. So if you look at a balance sheet and you don't see any depreciation, should you be concerned? You should, especially if there are assets that need to be depreciated.
Yes, sir.
Because some companies may not depreciate on purpose, see if they can get away with it. So that shows the asset at the maximum cost with no reduction each year. So it shows a balance sheet with what? Total greater assets, when in fact there's no provision for depreciation to reduce the amount of assets. It's called what? Cooking the books. And sometimes people cook the books out of ignorance. And sometimes they cook the books because they're far from ignorant. You follow, folks?
Yes, very deliberate.
Yeah, they know exactly what they're doing. And then when you catch them, they act ignorant.
That's it.
As if they didn't know. And then you need to say, but you ought to have known, Mr. Smith. And it would appear to me that there's malfeasance here. And as a lender, we do not take kindly to malfeasance and questionable behavior, even though we recognize, Mr. Jones, that it could have been a legitimate error. See what I'm saying? So you make the potential borrower a little uncomfortable, and maybe they'll tell you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth after that. Or maybe they might give an explanation that you can live with, or maybe not. These are all the things that lenders have to be keenly aware of somewhere along the way in making a what? Final decision. Okay? So if you're dating a guy and he punches you down, and then you're like, why did you punch me? He said, my hand slipped. It was an accident. I won't do it again. You might say, well, okay, it's possible until the next date and it slip again. After the second slip, what do?
Then he
That's
slipped.
your slip. Your slip. From the first
And he
time.
just slipped. He just slipped.
I slip back. Mine
No,
won't slip back.
no, don't slip back. If you slip back, then it ends up in an outright fight, and we don't
Big
do that.
fight.
Big fight.
If he slips, then you don't turn the other cheek. You just walk away. Say, don't. I'll call you. Don't call me. That's all.
Well, I gotta slip first.
You can get slipped through.
In other words, you may give your customer the benefit of a doubt if they lied, because it might not be it might be a legitimate error. That's possible. They have to satisfy you that it was what? Legitimate
error.
As opposed to intentional. That's the whole point. Okay? Once you determine it's not legitimate, that it was intentional, then you have to change your perspective. But if they give you any information to suggest to satisfy that it was unintentional, then you have another situation. You must then go ahead and give them the benefit of a doubt. All right. So if you look at page 22, then we see the liability side of what we saw on the asset side, the breakdown of the current liabilities. On
less than a year.
Yes, current liability. All of these current liabilities are going to be negotiated within 1 year.
Yes.
That's right.
So accrued taxes will be paid to the government within a year. You see that?
Yes. Yes.
Right? Accrued wages will be paid to employees within a
yeah.
Otherwise, fight will break out.
That's right.
That's right.
Trade.
Don't be late.
Absolutely. Give them my money. Remember that expression? Give them my money.
Give my money.
Give it to me now.
Yeah.
Give it to me now.
Absolutely. I asked my baby the other day, who was 23, I said, son, what does gum mean? He said, I don't know, Daddy. Because he really doesn't know. Because he's not really like keen on dialect. Even though he grew up right in this house.
That's
It's
right.
just that he was not exposed to
Ah,
a lot of dialect. So he
Uh-huh.
is not very well versed in dialect. And that will happen depending on the environment that children grow up. There's nothing wrong with dialect as long as you teach them the
Proper way.
standard. Of
Yeah.
course,
yeah.
of course. Look, ain't nothing wrong with no dialect. And how you think I
No.
learned to talk like that? Simple.
Exactly.
I learned to talk like that when I was small, growing up with my Grammy them. So it's not a problem for me. As you can see, I can easily switch from one to the other very easily.
Yes. Very
And I'm
quickly.
proud of the fact that I can do it, because oftentimes when I'm talking to young Bahamians, some of
You
them,
have
like,
to.
they don't get it. They either have so much dialect that they cannot speak standard English, or they have so much flicking standard English. And my children, they're having trouble with dialect, which is okay. All I'm saying is standard English is what you want the children to attain. If they
Which school your children went to? QCA.
Who said that?
Renita?
You know.
Renita, why are you trying to get me to confess to stuff? Let me say this. I am proud to say that the fact that my children are not good at dialect and speak standard English well is not because they went to the school you're trying to get me to admit to, but primarily because they spent 20-something years of their lives under the direct tutelage of home.
Okay.
Their
Okay.
father.
So they went to QC.
That's all.
Renita's trying to get me to confess. I know a lot of children who went to QC who speak very poorly, but many of them speak very politely as well. So I do get your point. Okay, I understand it. I'm just making the point that because some of them gone to private school, that I mean they could talk right.
No.
Okay,
That's
but
true.
many of them who have gone to private school do speak exceptionally well. Sometimes over well and thing. But that's okay if it's too well. As long as they understand it's okay to be dialectal if you have it. Nothing wrong with it. The only problem is when it's time to switch from dialect, if you can't, then it's not a big problem, but it is something of an issue, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Especially when you leave the Commonwealth, or you have to say something what? Formally, somewhere.
Like my boss, she said her daughter was in Miss Teen Bahamas. And she, you know, many years ago. And when they had the interviewing process, they asked her a question. I can't remember what the question was, but her response was, I ain't gonna lie, right? She said she put her hand in her head and she's like, oh my God, it's over.
No. And guess what? Folks, that's my point. It's not her fault.
No.
Okay? Nothing wrong with I ain't gonna lie. Even me could say that. My children can't say it. They will struggle to say I ain't gonna lie. It'll sound like they're learning a foreign flicking language. All right? But I'm proud to say that I could say I ain't gonna lie whenever I feel like, because I know exactly what
got it.
Got it.
Okay? So unfortunately for her, they did her the disservice of not telling her what the correct expression is.
Right.
So that when she gets in a formal setting, she could switch.
She knew, she just didn't switch. She went to QC.
Well, that's the other problem. The fact, no, because she went to QC doesn't mean that she knew. We just assume she knew.
Right.
That's the other point. See, just because somebody's in a QC or St. Andrews uniform, we assume stuff.
That's true.
Yeah.
But the assumption does not apply to all of them.
That's true.
Parents are just paying school fees, but that's some assumption about they're all brilliant and they're all well.
That's always the case.
No.
All it is your parents could afford for you to go
Of course. So
Yeah.
unless students actually get into the groove of trying
Yeah.
to be smart and study hard and speak well, they're not going
There's
to adopt.
a particular school that's known for sweethearts.
Eh?
That's where the children go. Like, you know, the fellas, they're sweethearts of the babies until they go to that particular school.
Of the man.
So you have gone
goodness.
the ratchet mothers.
Oh Lord, have mercy.
Now I feel like probing, Renita. What the hell?
Renita's got a tight jack.
What the hell is that?
right there on that road.
What was, okay.
Take him down road.
Take up that road. I said Burnett Road. Right there on Burnett Road.
A couple of schools on Burnett Road.
That's Kingsway.
Thank you, Elena.
It's flipping Kingsway.
It's flipping Kingsway.
Oh, get Kings, and that's a Holy Ghost thing. I'm church school.
The sweetheart school is good.
I mean,
Yes,
I
you check them mothers, and they like you will tell because they come there. Hi, hon. Hey, doll. They making noise, and you know. You'll be like, oh Lord.
I've heard the story, but I didn't realize it was Kingsway. I
Yeah,
thought it must have been the
That's
other
King
school
of
on
them
the other
road.
Mm-mm. And I know because I know a couple of them.
I don't take them them road.
Yeah, they just had good baby daddies with a couple dollars, and they send them to the school.
Yes, my foot. We're still doing that. Like, we still have a bunch of children under those
You
conditions.
mean?
Yes.
Child,
So what the hell happened to me? What did I miss?
you was the
Where was
the
I?
last good man left.
I mean, like, where was I though? How come
You mean you?
I don't know.
No, child.
Wow.
You mean you wasn't paying too
Plenty
much
of that,
extra school
plenty of
fee?
that still going on.
No, I was struggling to pay the school fee
That's crazy.
for my children. I
That's
don't know.
right.
I don't know how
Okay.
those guys do it, quite frankly.
They don't have the right amount of money. That's what it is. They have the money.
Thank God. Because when you have too much money,
Mhm.
it causes you to do all kinds of stupid stuff.
Silly things.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Then your child will be to the school on Burnett Road.
Take him them road.
Take them that road.
Yeah, either Burnett Road or the Nether Road,
Better win.
better known as Tingham Road. My God. All right. So, under your current liabilities, we have what? Deferred debts. We know what they are. By definition, what are deferred debts?
Long term.
Current
long?
liabilities. More than a year. Anything that's
more
long.
than
Over a year.
More than a
Okay.
year.
And then the third item on the equity side of the balance sheet is the net worth.
Net worth.
And the net worth, also known as owner's equity.
Owner's equity.
For a company, what do we call owner's equity?
Hold on. Owner's equity.
For a company.
Basically, like stocks.
Shareholders equity.
Shareholders.
Yeah, shareholders equity. Great. At least you wrote it down. You can actually find it. That's good.
Yeah.
And we also said that shareholders equity is divided into two categories. What are they?
That's capital stock and return and common stock. Capital or common stock. And then return
earnings.
Which two are the same?
Capital stock and common
stock and common stock.
Good. And the other part is?
Retained
earnings.
Excellent. Which means, and what did I say retained earnings was again?
I
said it was divided. Net income is divided in two parts. Where do they go?
Parts.
One part goes where?
That's something
one part goes to shareholders as dividends.
Right,
And
another
the other part is retained or kept in the company
okay,
for further investment. Okay, folks? So whenever you see retained earnings, again, don't panic. It only means that it's your net income that is divided between shareholders as dividends, and the other portion stays into the company for further investments. Okay?
Sure.
All right. Now, if you look at page 24, there's a nice, beautiful balance sheet that is a great example of all the elements that we discussed. And what I want you to do for next week's class is to go over that balance sheet and see if you understand the elements as per our discussion. If you don't, if you see an element there that you don't remember,
Send you an email.
Sorry?
I'll send you an email or Google it.
Well, first of all, yeah, here's what you do. And I'm glad you said it. Here's how that works. If you're looking at this balance sheet and you're looking at elements that you don't recognize or you're not clear on, first thing you do is go back to your notes to see what it is. Then
this is clear. This is the clear one.
It pretty much is.
It is clear.
If for some reason though there's something there that's you don't understand from your notes, Google it. Google it. Mark, by the way, they had the Google head in front of the Senate today wanting to know why they'd leave information up on terrorism and stuff to the President of the United States about the election. They take it down in one day. That's another story. And that's because Google represents the Democrats. And so they're still playing that nasty, dirty, filthy game when they're supposed to be impartial. But there's no such thing as impartiality. Just depends on who chooses to show their butt or not. All right, but that's another issue. So if you Google it and you're still like, wait a minute, I checked my notes.
This is pretty clear. Wait, with the notes and what you were drilling into us.
I know.
This is pretty clear.
I know, but I'm just being dramatic, like how I want Renita to be at the next shareholders meeting.
Yes.
I know it's clear, but allow me to be dramatic. First of all, if you're going through the balance sheet and something is not clear, check your notes. If the notes don't satisfy you, Google it.
Google it.
And if all that crap plus my discussion tonight still doesn't satisfy you, then send me an email.
Yes.
How's that?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
That's fair.
how's that for drama? I'm trying to train Anita on how to behave in her next shareholders meeting.
Yes, Chad.
And Renita, make sure you get a noisy chair. If they give you a soft chair, don't take that. Take one of those noisy chairs. So when you stand up and kick back, the chair goes back.
Yes.
So they know that you didn't come to play or
and wear your flat shoes. Don't slap it up.
Yes.
No.
Okay.
And put your hair in one. When you start, just put your hair in one.
Absolutely. That means you need business. All right? And don't get up gently like I's a girl and so I get up. No, stand up and kick the chair back with your butt or your legs. So that they know. Okay? Mr. Chairman, this is my first meeting. And I'm here because I'm very concerned that during the pandemic, when I needed you most, you paid no flicking dividends.
That's right. And say flicking.
Please do.
That's
Flick
right.
me on that one if you need to.
That's right.
And let's see what happens.
Got it.
All right. So have a look at that. The last thing on our list for this evening is a very short income statement, because the income statement doesn't have nearly as many elements as the balance sheet. On page 28, I think it is, it starts off with just, the gross sales. All right, gross sales, no big deal. Gross sales means we take all the items sold, multiplied by the prices, and we come up with all the sales we made for that year. Simple as that. That's all gross sales is. And if I ask you that, don't complicate it. Just say it exactly like that. Now, gross sales? Number of units sold.
They say it exactly like that.
Oh, here's how you say it. Gross sales equals the number of units sold times the selling price.
Okay.
That's it. Don't complicate it. Now, once we have the gross sales figure in the income statement, you remember you're the lender looking at your client's income statement now. So you look at the gross sales, is okay, that looks reasonable. Then the next thing you want to explore is something we call cost of goods sold. Now, as you can see on the bottom of page 28, cost of goods sold is simply what the company pays to replace its inventory. You see that, folks? Don't complicate it. Read it. Read all of it. Don't say, well, Mr. Wilkinson told me I'm not reading that because I'm freaking busy. Don't do that. Still read it because I am likely to ask you other little bits and pieces to see if you read it. But in principle, cost of goods sold represents the cost of replacing your inventory. Because if you're in business and you're selling stuff, you have to replace it to sell more.
Yeah.
That's all cost of goods sold is. So how do we calculate cost of goods sold? Well, what are we selling? Give me something.
Bleach.
Okay.
Bleach.
Again. Yeah. So the cost of producing bleach after we add up raw materials, right? Plus the cost of work in process, plus the finished goods, whatever the final cost is when we get to finished goods for each bottle of bleach, that will be the cost of the goods sold, which means that when you add up all your costs for making the bleach to get it into the store, let's say that cost is $2 a bottle. No, let's say $1.50 because Blanco bleach is not very expensive still. Okay?
No.
So let's say they produce it for $1.50. Would they sell it to the food store for $1.50? No.
No.
Their cost is $1.50. But they will sell it to the food store for maybe $2 or $2.50.
Right.
So they make a profit, right? So their gross would be the number of units times the 250, but their cost would be the number of units times what? The 150.
150. Right.
Does that make sense, folks?
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
in accounting, for people like me who are accountants, there's a whole bunch of crap behind that, which you as lenders don't need to know. Otherwise, you wouldn't be lending. You'd probably be what? Accountants.
Right.
Okay? For you, that's what you need to know. The difference between gross sales and cost of goods sold. Okay? So when you look at your client's income statement, you should see gross sales equals, let's say, $50,000. Then you should see cost of goods sold equal $30,000. You follow?
Yes, sir.
Which means that the next line, which we call gross profit,
$20,000.
gross profit is
$20,000.
and that's what I'm talking about.
20,000.
You guys are quick learners, yes. And then out of that 20,000, we pay all of our expenses that we call salaries,
right?
EPL, NIB. Who else? Water,
cable,
because we're watching TV while we're bleaching bleach.
Or internet.
Or internet, yes. What else?
And the little office supplies.
Office supplies.
The little
miscellaneous.
Yeah, miscellaneous.
You're back to miscellaneous? They don't want anything miscellaneous, too spooky. You have to give these things names. Accountants hate the word miscellaneous because it suggests that, well, not accountants.
Too much of a gray area.
Not accountants, auditors.
Yeah, too much of a gray area.
Accountants love miscellaneous because they like to hide things in miscellaneous. But auditors hate miscellaneous unless it's a very small amount. If an auditor walks into a company and sees miscellaneous 50,000, man, they're going to start asking for a cup of coffee, smoke a cigarette, because they plan to spend some time. And
that $50,000 need to represent something.
Of course.
Something. Break it down.
And then they might find that it isn't, the only miscellaneous thing about it is that somebody wrote a check to themselves, call it miscellaneous,
and hide it.
And run off with the flicking money.
Teeth.
Yes. And hide it in miscellaneous. Okay? So we love every expense except that one, unless, of course, it's a small amount. If it's $50, $300, $1,000, okay, we can live with stuff like that. Even $2,000, $5,000, depending on the size of the company. But when miscellaneous start to get too uncomfortably high, then those of us who are lenders and auditors, it begins to make us wonder. All right, so we have gross sales minus cost of goods sold, which is the replacement cost for inventory, equals what? Gross profit.
Gross profit.
Minus every other expense.
Other expense.
Right? And once we subtract operating expenses, then we either have net income or net loss. Net income is determined by looking at your gross profit or your gross sales. If sales are more than expenses and cost, then you would have made a profit. If sales are less, okay, let's say your gross profit, so your cost of goods sold plus your expenses are more than your sales, then you will suffer a loss. So if you have sales of 100,000 and your cost of goods plus expenses equal 80,000, what's your profit? $20,000. If you have sales of 100,000, but your cost of goods sold and expenses are 120,000, is that a profit or a loss?
Loss.
A loss of 20,000.
Now that you understand that, there isn't any, and what we talked about before, there isn't any balance sheet that you cannot now look. You're not experts in accounting. That's not why you're doing this. But you are considerably now more informed about how to look at these two financial statements, such that if you have any question when you look at any of them, even if you don't know the answer or the reason, you know enough to call an accountant like me.
Yes.
And say, what does this mean? See my point?
Yes, sir.
That's really the whole idea about doing this crazy stuff. So if you look at page 30, then you have two pieces of homework now. You look at this very simple income statement. It's a nice clean one. All of them in life are not this clean. Some income statements and balance sheets can go on for pages in the real world, especially for medium and large companies, especially large companies. But even though they may be huge in content, the principles are the same. If a balance sheet has assets of $20 billion, it doesn't matter. The other side of the balance sheet must still have what? Liabilities and
assets, eh?
Not assets. The other side of the balance sheet must have liabilities and?
That was equity, eh?
Of course.
Yes.
And if the asset side of the balance sheet is 20 billion, when you add liabilities and equities together, it should still equal?
Even 20 billion.
20 billion.
So it doesn't matter the size, whether it's $10 or $10 billion
Yes,
in the company. The principles remain the same.
Yeah.
The elements that we discuss mean the same. A deferred asset is still
A
long-term asset.
Long-term asset.
A deferred liability is still
a long-term
Long-term.
Shareholders' equity is still shareholders' equity.
Shareholders' equity.
Retained earnings are still
Retained earnings.
accrued wages are still
If you owe the people the money.
cash is still
Cash. Yeah.
You guys came online at the right time tonight. For those who didn't show up, I'm sure they'll be saying, I'll look at the bloody video. But guess what? The video is not the real thing, even though it's the real thing, but it's not the real thing.
No, because you don't have an opportunity to ask questions.
No.
And we were engaged.
Yes, that's my point. So they could go and brag about this stinky video they watched later, but they never will ever get the feeling that we had tonight because we what? Interacted.
Yes.
Okay, so that's your homework for next week, to look at the balance sheet and the income statement. And again, if something is not clear, first go to your notes.
Yes, sir.
If that fails, go to Google. If both of them fail you, then I will be your last resort. And if I don't know, I'll tell you what to do next. How's that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're gonna break. You guys have been fantastic.
Likewise.
I enjoyed it.
It was,
Yes.
it was absolutely fantastic. You guys have a great week. I'll be getting your results to you soon, and make sure you get back next week, same time, in one piece.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
By the way, does anybody know how long this course runs for?
10 weeks.
10
weeks?
10 weeks. 10 weeks.
Are you sure?
I think so. Let's see.
November 21st, eh?
Is that 10 weeks?
10 weeks, yeah. 10
Yes.
weeks. 10
Okay.
weeks, Mr. Wilkinson.
The ad that you got from Biff's, does it have 10 weeks on it?
I think it said 12, eh?
It shouldn't say 12.
What did it say?
I don't know. It says 12?
I don't know what it say.
I thought it was
Yeah, I
12.
thought it was 10.
I thought it was 12, but here it's 10. I on my outline it's saying 10.
It's 10. The reason why I ask, because there's been some question as to whether it's 8 or 10. Okay? From what I recall, it's supposed to be 10.
10, okay.
I will
Yeah,
double
10.
check my schedule to see if I can advise the persons concerned that, as far as I'm aware, it's 10 weeks and not 8 weeks.
Hey.
No,
Okay.
no, it ain't 8 weeks on here. No.
All right. So I'll see you guys next week, same time. Have a great week and get back in one piece. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Good night.
Yes,
Bye,
sir. Good
Alina.
night. Bye, Renita.
Renita, make sure you have an appointment for tomorrow. Call
Oh,
buddy
Yes, sir.
people.
Call them. Raise hell, girl. Raise hell.
Raise hell, doggone it. I
That-
want to
Doggone
know.
it.
That's your additional homework on
That's
top
right.
of what I gave you.
Doggone it.
And I expect for you, Doug, on it to report to me on what the results
week.
of that was next week.
All
Yes.
right,
Alright?
sir.
So everybody
Okay.
else, everybody else has 2 parts. You have 3.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay? And you will
All
get
right.
no extra credit because that's for
No.
your own good. Okay?
That's right.
Great.
That money, girl. Get that money.
Doggone it.
I'm serious,
I'll
sir.
see you guys next week and take care.
Okay, bye. Good
Okay,
night.
bye.
Good night.